Hello everyone, I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. Prologue. Hollow Bend, 1992. The town of Hollow Bend sat where the woods gave way to water, a half-forgotten dot on the map, straddling the edge of Hollow Lake. People said the lake used to be smaller. Then one spring, it swelled after weeks of rain, swallowing roads and barns and one entire farm that never resurfaced. That summer, Eli Turner and Caleb Price, both 8, spent their days barefoot on the muddy banks, pockets heavy with marbles and bottle caps, arguing about who could skip stones the farthest. Caleb was the wiry one, all elbows and energy. Eli moved slower, studying the ripples before he threw, like he thought the water might whisper back. That evening the lake looked peaceful, pale gold under a sinking sun. The boys were still laughing when Caleb stopped mid-stride. Something had washed ashore between the reeds. At first, Eli thought it was driftwood. Then he saw the scales, or what was left of them. The fish was huge, nearly the size of a dog, but its belly was flayed open, the bones white as chalk. The flesh wasn't chewed, it was carved, the cuts too straight, too deep. Caleb crouched closer. What could do that? Eli swallowed. Maybe a propeller? There's no boats out today. The water lapped once against their ankles, cold and slow. Eli dropped the stone he'd been holding. They said nothing more. Years later, both boys would remember that evening differently. But they'd agree on one thing. That was the first summer Hollow Bend began to feel watched.
33 years later,
Eli Turner ran the lake patrol for Hollow County. The world had moved on. Digital logs, GPS buoys, modern engines, but the lake stayed old, its surface still wearing the same uneasy calm. His mornings were routine: check moorings, tow in stalled fishermen, chase teenagers from the cliffs. The boat, an aging aluminium patrol craft named Marla, creaked with every wave, but Eli trusted her more than most people. By dusk, Hollow Lake turned silver. That was when things got strange. People whispered about the disappearances. 3 in 5 months. A girl whose bike was found near the dam, a couple whose truck rolled empty into the shallows, and Jonas Pike, an old trapper who left his cabin one foggy dawn and never came back. Eli didn't believe the talk about something in the water until the night he saw the smoke.
it was near midnight when Eli spotted it.
A thin black plume rising straight from the lake's center. He throttled forward, the engine grumbling under his boots. The smell hit first. Burning fuel, salt, and something metallic beneath. Through the smoke, a boat's silhouette emerged. The Mercy Ann, an old trawler everyone in Hollow Bend knew belonged to Jonas Pike. The hull was cracked open like an eggshell, flames licking up through the deckboards. "Jonas!" Eli shouted. A shape stumbled from the cabin, coughing. Jonas's beard was scorched, his face streaked with soot. He waved an arm, then crumpled against the railing. Eli hurled a rope. "Grab it!" Jonas missed. The next second, the deck beneath him exploded in orange light. Eli didn't think. He dove halfway over the patrol boat, snagged the old man by the coat, and hauled him across the gap as the trawler gave a moaning, metal-deep groan. A heartbeat later, the Mercy Ann vanished in a blossom of fire and spray. They hit the deck hard. Jonas coughed water and blood. "It hit us," he rasped, "right under the hull. Not rocks, not logs. It hit us." Eli looked back over the rail. The flames dimmed into ripples. Beneath the surface, something moved, slow, deliberate, a wide shadow curling away into the dark. He gripped his radio, knuckles white. "Sheriff Holt," he said, You'd better get down to the dock. Sheriff Nora Holt had been a deputy back when Eli's father ran the patrol. She'd seen her share of drownings and drunks, but the lake fires were new. When she met Eli at the marina, Jonas was half-conscious on a stretcher, mumbling through cracked lips. Nora knelt beside him. What happened out there? Jonas's hand trembled as he pointed toward the water. It ain't gone, he whispered. The thing that lives under hollow. Paramedics exchanged looks, assuming delirium. Nora didn't. She'd heard that phrase before, the thing under hollow. Back when she was a kid, her grandfather said the lake was cursed because the valley beneath it never wanted to drown. She stood, watching the black water swallow the last glow of burning fuel. Drain samples, she told her deputy. Check for contaminants. But in her gut, she already knew this wasn't about fuel. By dawn, Eli was home. The patrol jacket hung heavy with lake spray. His son, Noah, 9 years old and half awake, met him at the porch with a baseball glove. Catch before breakfast? The boy asked, grinning. Eli rubbed his eyes. 5 minutes to change, then you're mine. Their dog, a black shepherd named Rex, trotted beside them as they threw the ball across the dew-wet yard. The normalcy helped. It almost erased the smell of smoke still clinging to Eli's hands. Sheriff Holt came by last night, Noah said between throws. She told Grandpa the lake's off limits again. Eli caught the ball midair. Yeah, it's just until we check something. What kind of something? Eli hesitated. A leak. Maybe Noah frowned, but before he could ask more, Rex barked toward the woods. One sharp bark, then a growl. The ball rolled into the grass. Eli's gaze followed the dog's stance. Nothing moved between the trees, but the sound, that faint, wet slosh, was wrong. It didn't come from the pond. It came from the soil, as if water were breathing underneath. Inside, Eli said quietly. They went. By evening, the town felt smaller. Storefronts shut early, lights out behind drawn blinds. Hollow Bend used to live off the lake. Fishing, boat repair, tourists. Now even the gulls seemed to have left. Sheriff Holt drove down Main Street, headlights catching empty swings and boarded windows. Her radio crackled with static. For a moment, through the interference, she thought she heard a voice, faint, submerged. She turned the dial. Nothing. At her office, Holt pulled the county archives. Accident reports, missing persons logs, newspaper clippings. It didn't take long to notice the pattern. Every decade or so, the disappearances returned, always near the same month, always near the lake's south inlet, where the drowned valley lay. A headline caught her eye. 1943. Local miners lost in flood tunnel collapse. Bodies never recovered. A note in the margin read, tunnels still under Hollow Lake. Sealed. Mostly. She stared at the photo. Men in oilskin coats standing beside a sinkhole that would later become the lake's heart. The whispers were true. Hollow Lake hadn't swallowed a farm. It had swallowed a mine. Jonas Pike's nephew Marcus showed up at the hospital that afternoon, his arm bandaged, eyes sunken from lack of sleep. He was a mechanic, one of the few who still worked near the docks. When Holt and Eli visited his room, he spoke before they even asked. My uncle wasn't crazy, he said. He told me about the tunnels, said something moved down there, big enough to shift the water. Eli folded his arms. We searched those tunnels years ago. Nothing left. Marcus shook his head. You didn't go deep enough. The old shafts were connected, like veins. The water filled them, but not all the way. He lowered his voice. When I was a kid, I used to fish by the inlet. I heard metal scraping below the surface, like chains dragging. My uncle said those miners weren't just buried. They were trapped. And something learned to live with them. Nora exhaled through her teeth. You expect me to write that in a report? No, ma'am, Marcus said. I expect you to listen.
That night,
Against orders, Eli launched the Marla alone. The moonlight turned the water pale as bone. Near the south inlet, the sonar flickered. Shallow, deep, then nothing. He killed the engine. Silence. Then, a tremor. Not on the surface, underneath. The hull shivered, as if something vast had exhaled beneath it. He shone his spotlight into the black. For a heartbeat he saw movement, a shape rolling just under the water, broad as a truck, glinting like metal scales. Eli's breath caught. He reached for the camera mounted on the dash, but the beam went out. The boat pitched. Something struck from below. Once, twice, hard enough to rattle every bolt. The radio hissed. "Eli?" Sheriff Holt's voice. "Report in." Static drowned her out. Then came another sound, not static, a low moan through the hull, like wind through a tunnel. The lake spoke. Eli slammed the throttle. The boat lurched toward shore, but before it cleared the inlet, something rose, a slick curve breaching the surface. It wasn't a fin. It was an arm, a human arm, pale and long, jointed wrong, webbed between the fingers, dragging itself upward. He fired a flare. The red light burst over the water, revealing a dozen shapes beneath. Faces half-formed, mouths open, eyes milky white. The lake was full of them, moving as one. Then the flare sputtered out. Hours later, a fisherman found the patrol boat drifting near the dam, its deck scarred with deep gouges. No sign of Eli. Sheriff Holt was on site before sunrise. She found his radio, waterlogged but still blinking. The last thing recorded was a voice, his. "If anyone finds this, the lake isn't deep. It's hungry. Tell my boy to stay away from the water." She stared out over the pale morning waves. The surface was calm again, perfect as glass. But just before she turned away, a ripple spread outward from the center, small, almost gentle. Then another, and another. Far beneath, something shifted.
1 week later,
Noah Turner stood on the porch, glove in hand. The lake glimmered beyond the trees, bright under the noon sun. Grandpa Price rested a hand on his shoulder. "They still haven't found your dad," he said softly. Noah didn't answer. He just watched the water. A dragonfly skimmed the surface, and for an instant a shadow rose beneath it, the faintest outline of a hand breaking the light before vanishing again. Rex growled low, the fur along his neck lifting. The boy whispered, almost to himself, "I think the lake remembers."